This is the RACER H2O podcast.
It's time to drop that flag!
Go! Come on. Right here, go get him! Cut it tight. Be on the tractor, baby! Bring it home!
And now here's your host.
Rewind battle for the lead, shoulder to shoulder, going into turn one. Rips that boot around!
Jared Rosberg.
Oh my, here we go again. What's up, troops? It's your old pal Jared here. Welcome to the RACER H2O podcast. Got a very special guest coming up on the show. Before this whole virus thingy hit, this was supposed to be Guntersville week for us. We were going to take our TV cameras back to Alabama to cover Guntersville Lake HydroFest and the H1 Unlimited Hydroplane racing, as well as Powerboat Nationals racing. But, well, here we sit, just like everybody else. So before we get to our guest this week, I do have a little bit of bad news. It's very bad news, fans. We lost a member of the personal watercraft racing community. Keith Walker passed away this past weekend. Died of a heart attack while mountain biking. Keith was known for his infectious laugh and free spirit, and he's going to be missed by many, many people in and out of the personal watercraft racing community. A celebration of his life will be held Friday, June 26th at noon at Jefferson Memorial in Trussville, Alabama. Donations honoring Keith are being gathered via a GoFundMe account. We will put a link to that on the RACER H2O social media. Make sure you go there, give what you can. Keith Walker was just 50 years old. Coming up on the RACER H2O podcast, she made history in Guntersville last year, fans. We're bringing her on the podcast to talk about that and so much more. Jayme Durand, Pro Tunnel 1 racer from Powerboat Nationals, is our guest. And we'll have our conversation with her when we return to the podcast in just 15 seconds.
Get up-to-the-minute watercraft racing news and fantastic bonus content by joining RACER H2O on social media.
Links to our Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube pages are easy to find at racerh2o.com.
This is the RACER H2O podcast.
All right, fans, welcome back to the RACER H2O podcast. You know, this time a year ago, in fact, we should have been on the road this year. We were on our way last year to our first race on Lake Guntersville in Guntersville Lake, Guntersville, Alabama. Fantastic weekend of racing we had. Unfortunately, this year we were supposed to go. We were supposed to go and cover both Powerboat Nationals and H1 Unlimited Hydroplanes there for our RACER H2O television broadcast, but like everything else this year so far, COVID-19 stepped in and made us adjust our plans. However, talking about last year's race in Guntersville, you have to talk about our guest this week. Jayme Durand lit up the world of powerboat racing in 2019. She really started it in Knoxville the couple weeks before, but Guntersville is where she made history, and she joins us on the podcast now. Jayme Durand, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Well, you know, before we start talking about 2019, let's go back and introduce you to a lot of fans that maybe aren't familiar with tunnel boat racing and what you've done as far as your career is concerned. How did you get started? I know your dad was big into racing, your family's into racing. Being from Augusta, I'm sure that you've seen the racing, but how did you get involved?
Yeah, funny story. Well, obviously, like you said, I grew up, Augusta, Georgia always had River Race Augusta, so it was a huge staple, and I grew up going to races with my parents. It was a highlight getting to the pits. They had a VIP area. Then you could get there early and walk through the pits and see all the drivers, and I loved it. And I always kind of joked and said I was going to be a female boat race driver, and I think it was around 99-ish that the tunnel boat racing circle track had stopped coming to Augusta, and things got busy and out of sight, out of mind. And randomly, I think it was probably 4 years ago, my dad kind of stayed in it a little bit, helping Lee Daniel here and there with motors. And he had actually bought me a Tundra found in Texas and flew out, and him and my mom drove back, and he pulled a tunnel boat back. And we thought, okay, is it a backup boat for Lee? He didn't really give us any information. And my mom called and said, do you know your dad's going to race in Knoxville? I said, race what? He's not competitive. Like, he's doing what? Like, he had been driving some SUVs down the river every now and then, and I knew he liked going fast, but, I mean, really, to race? So I'm like, I got to be there. And went to that race and just, you know, loved you're back in the atmosphere you grew up in. And I knew I was super busy. I just opened my gym, and it was a thought, but I didn't really think too much into it. And we had the drag boats on the river. My parents live on the river, and everybody was down at the house working on boats. Chip, he's been in racing. I think he's 78 and raced forever. Lee and my dad and Billy, everybody's down there, and they're working on motors. And Chip said, I got a boat. I got a super sport boat if you want to race. And I was like, well, you can see my wheels turning, but my dad said, well, you got to drive to Tennessee or to Virginia to dunk test if you're going to race. I said, I'm not driving 8 hours if I'm not racing. He's like, oh, we can get the boat ready. We can pull it. So they got the motor running, and Hollywood, one of my dad's friends, actually had the boat painted, and here we go to, I think it was my dad's second race, and I'm getting in a super sport. And I actually won my first race, and I was hooked. And the funny story of how I got in the tunnel boat, the boat I'm in, my dad actually bought for himself, and he did not fit in it. So that became my boat. And honestly, I love it. Not only did I get to race against my dad, it took us back to, we used to grew up riding four-wheelers, and just life didn't matter. It was kind of, we were in the moment, and that's kind of what boat racing is we just back to the family and your boat race family and your immediate family, and just having a good time. You go compete on the water, and then you come off, and it's a huge extended family. And so that's kind of the shorter version of where we are today, but it's definitely in my blood, and I love every second of it.
Well, you've had a pretty solid support system around you. I mean, your dad, Dean Durand, you mentioned Chip Wavero. He's a veteran racer. We've seen him in his 60 boat out there. He's one of only a handful of people that I've seen blow a 60 boat over, which is interesting. And I'm not sure he's too happy about me mentioning that. But, you know, what's even more interesting is that, you know, most people, when they start out in tunnel boats, they start, you know, with a kneel down, a hydro or something like that. Then they might move to an encased cockpit with a 45 or an SST 60. You started out in a super sport, also known as a Formula Outlaw for our fans that have seen it on television. That's a big boat. In fact, that's a little bit bigger, if I'm not mistaken, than the PT1 or the F1 boat that you're racing now, and it certainly doesn't corner as much. What kind of things did you learn driving that bigger boat that you were able to apply to the tunnel boat?
Nothing, meaning they do not correlate at all. It's a shorter course. You have to turn about 70 times, because as soon as you turn left, you got to turn back right to keep from spinning it out. And then somebody's coming around you. I did learn you can't really blow it over, but you can stuff it. I did that a couple times. I think we were in Ravenswood when I went out and broke the fin off the back. But as far as I do remember, my dad was running his boat on the river, and I'd come home from work one day, and I was like, I want to drive his boat. And thinking he was going to say, you're not getting in the boat. He's like, okay. So I got in his tunnel boat, and of course I'm like thinking I was going really fast, and I really wasn't, because I've never really drove a boat that, you know, comes out of the water and got all these buttons, doesn't have reverse, you know. And I had a blast. So it was like the next week I wanted to do it again. And so I'd go out there, and they had a course set up, and I don't at the time, I definitely didn't have fear. And I went out and I'm turning it, and I come in and they're like, "Don't tell your dad this, but you turned the boat way better than he did. You've only been in it a couple of times." And I'm like, got that itch of, I'd love to do it, but I don't know, because I knew what the boat could do and things like that. And so long, when as far as comparing them, you can't turn it. You got to set the boat. There's so many things to think about. I was in my first race in Super Sport or Outlaw. You don't have to do a time trial. We did a roll and start, and we were in New Martinsville, and the first time I've done a time trial, of course, everybody's talking crap. Are you going to beat your dad? Are you going to do this? And my adrenaline's going. I had no fear. Like, I hadn't really learned what the respect of the boat meant. It was like chips on my radio, and they're like, "You got to go wide." So Dad's already done his time trial, and he's sitting in the turn, and I came down balls to the wall. I mean, I full throttle, trimmed out, and I never lifted. I hit the trim down, and of course that's what you're supposed to do, but probably not first time doing a time trial. And set the boat, and about that time, next thing I know, I'm flying through the air, landed upright, and I'm like, holy cow. I go on my radio, I'm like, I'm good. Well, about that time, they're like, get out the boat, the back pad's peeling off, and the boat started to sink. I had to get out. My mom's going nuts, and needless to say, I didn't beat my dad's time trial, but I learned a lot of respect for a tunnel boat at that point. And I played sports. Sports came easy, but now I will say, to get back in that boat and getting back on the horse, if it weren't for the people I race with and the encouragement and the teaching, I don't know if I'd have had the year I had last year, because that was definitely one of those, like, am I in over my head? Can I do this? But I can't say enough great things about the people in the race community.
Well, leading into 2019, the buzz in the pits was all about Jayme Durand. We had seen you have some success and just see the fundamentals growing all through 2018. But coming into 2019, you were the one everybody was talking about in the pits. Did you have any idea that was going on, and did you have any idea that you would see any of the success that you did last year?
Honestly, no. I mean, I knew that I had more confidence as a driver. And honestly, I still know that I have a ton of seat time left to get compared to the races. Lee Daniel, you got Jeff Reno, you got all these racers who have raced forever. So I can't even compare the seat time and experience. But I knew I could be competitive. I at least had that confidence that I was ready to go out and compete. And never in my wildest dreams did I, and I don't, for the people listening, Lee Daniel, actually, his dad and him build our motors. So that's really the coolest part, is I'm running motors that he builds. And, I just never wrapped my head around that I would be running up there with him, much less in Knoxville past him. And I think Gail on my radio, you could probably hear through my radio headset in the boat. So no, to answer the specific question, I was going to go out and give it my best shot and knew I got better, but definitely didn't expect to have the year that I had last year.
Well, we saw the first bit of success and the first history-making moment for you. We're speaking with Jayme Durand, who is a tunnel boat racer and a Pro Tunnel 1 racer with Powerboat Nationals. And the first chapter of your history-making 2019, Jayme, was, as you said, in Knoxville. You got around Lee Daniel in the feature race. It was the first time we had seen anybody other than Lee Daniel leading the race when it comes to the big boats in Knoxville. I mean, he's the winningest driver in that corner of the Tennessee River. And you got by him. How hard was it to keep it together in the cockpit? I mean, you worked hard. You got past the guy that everybody wanted to get by. I mean, how hard was it to keep it together in the cockpit?
I was driving, so that's like kind of you're in your zone, and I was having my starter was hung coming off the dock, so I wasn't coming off the dock well, and we had been battling, and I don't remember, he got hung up in traffic, and so I'd gained a little bit on him and knew I wasn't going to take him on the inside, so I knew my only shot was to try to find clean water and push the outside, and it was just one of those perfect moments. And when I passed him, I think it was surreal. I mean, it was one of those, like, did this really just happen? I mean, I knew it happened because I could hear Gil in my ear. But it just goes to show that a race, just like with NASCAR, with anything, with the flip of a switch, things can change. And I got around him, and I want to say I had a pretty strong lead, knew if I could just maintain it that I was going to win the race. And about that time, I think Jake Alcamo blew it over, which caused us a restart. And I knew the dock wasn't going to be good because, first off, Lee's amazing coming off the dock, and second, I had not been coming off the dock very well that race. So it was a blast. That was probably one of the funnest races I've raced.
Well, an interesting sidebar, fans. If you want to watch that race, you can go to the RMG Sports YouTube channel. We have our coverage of that, the TV coverage that we had, and you can see Jayme get by, and you can see Lee get back by off the dock because, it was Jake Alcamo that did barrel roll outside of turn one and made everybody head back to the dock for a restart, and unfortunately, Lee got you coming off the dock. Now, going into the next race, which was Guntersville, did you have a little bit of a chip on your shoulder? I mean, a little bit of extra juice with you? I mean, you got by the champ. You proved to everybody that you could do it. Did you go into that race thinking, hey, this is it. I got by him. I'm going to get around him again and stay ahead of him?
Well, that's the thing about being next to each other and close as far as local. I knew what he was doing at home, meaning there was no way if I did, it was going to be easy. I mean, he was tuning and testing, and it gave me the confidence to know that I could run with it. But again, by no means did I think I was going to go and win that race. I knew that I had a chance because I had kind of proved myself that. But, I knew the boat was running great. We had tested, and, I mean, it was a perfect storm. I mean, qualifying went well, had the pole. Guntersville fans were amazing. That was probably one of the coolest sights, and just everything fell in line that race. And by no means did I go into that race thinking I'm going to beat Lee. No, I went into it knowing I could compete, and I was going to drive the best race that I could and just hope for the best outcome. And I ended up getting it, and it was one of those definitely you put on top memories of winning that race.
Who would you say was more excited after the race, you or your spotter, Gail Schaefer? Because we have her recording. we have her on the radio with you, and if you watch our coverage, fans, it's on the RACER H2O YouTube channel. Who is more excited, you or Gail?
No, it was a toss-up. She had kind of been supporting since I'd started racing in Super Sport, and you've got that person that sometimes when you don't believe in yourself, and especially after I'd barrel rolled it and got back in it, she was always there pushing, you got this. So definitely when we crossed the finish line, it would be a toss up because you could definitely hear the same when I passed Lee. So that's what makes it so awesome.
Well, you made a lot of history in 2019. Knoxville, you were the first woman to lead a race in the PT1 class in Powerboat Nationals. In Guntersville, you were the first woman to win a race. Does that mean something to you, the whole being a first woman to do something? I mean, I know when my daughters watched the show, they were pretty jazzed to see a lady up in front. Has that sunk in, how important that is to other women, to little girls out there that might be looking, that they're looking at Jayme Durand as the trendsetter, as the pathfinder? I mean, how does that sit with you?
Yeah, because that was me as the little kid. It was, and my brain's totally blank, and I can see the boat, and it shows how much of an impact it made. It's not. I got up at 4 o'clock teaching this morning, but there was one female boat race driver when I grew up, and that was that. You know, she's out there competing, and she's with the guys, and she's not scared. And you know, I grew up playing baseball because I wanted to compete, and it definitely does, because that was me. That was me as a little girl. So showing up in the pits, or people coming up and introducing themselves, and that's what makes the weekend, is our fans.
Well, again, we're speaking with Jayme Durand, Proton 01 driver with Powerboat Nationals. Now, Jayme, in 2019, you had upward trajectory with a solid finish in Knoxville, a win in Guntersville, but then the Gremlins hit you in Marietta and Ravenswood after that, with DNFs in both. Then along came Trenton, Michigan. Now, for fans that aren't familiar with what happened in Trenton, there was a tragic accident involving your father, Dean Durand, in qualifying, where he was involved in a wreck. And fans, I'm not going to lie to you, I can't sugarcoat it. I mean, Jayme, you can back me up on this. He almost lost his arm. That's how serious this race was, or how serious this wreck was. Now, how hard, you were there, you were racing alongside of him, you were part of the event. You came back out on Sunday and you raced. And had you not struck that buoy towards the end, and again, fans, you could watch coverage of the Grand Prix of Michigan and Trenton on the RMG Sports YouTube channel. I mean, you were driving with your hair on fire. But how hard was it to get back in the cockpit knowing that your dad was sitting in intensive care, or was it a motivating factor for you?
I don't think there was a race I wanted to win more. But I'll tell you how I got to that. So yeah, to back Jared up, I don't even know if it was as much his arm as even his life. I mean, it was one of those just total God things of, first off, freak accident, getting turned the opposite way. We know when we get in the boats the risk that we take, which is why the proper safety equipment is so important. But Gail came on my radio and said, your dad and Don wrecked. And we had just joked about, because we flew to that race, and said whoever doesn't keep their boat together has to drive the stacker home. And I looked downriver, and Don's going back to the dock. And for those of you that don't know, Don was driving my dad's other boat, and my dad's boat was on top of the water still running. So in our world, that's great news because they're both upright. And so I go over the radio, and I'm like, ha, look, he's not flying home. Well, about that time, Gail comes over and says, they're not getting your dad out. Well, radio goes silent. And at that point, somebody said, well, why didn't you drive over there? And I still don't know, and I'm so glad I didn't. But they just said, you got a piece of wood through his arm, and they're going to take him to the hospital, and he's good. So at that point, I'm like, okay, let's race. And it wasn't until after the race when I saw the boat and I don't think I've ever seen a boat that tore up. I knew it was real, and I knew I wasn't sure what I was going to walk into and get to the race. And at that time, when I talked about the race family before, I really got to see, not that I ever doubted it, but just the support around me and my family. And it was definitely a scary time he had lost radial pulse, and we didn't know, was he going to lose his arm, was he not? And it was Saturday night about 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock at night when we finally got the okay that they got blood flow back and humerus fracture, things like that fixed, or not fixed, but set. And everything was okay. Of course, everybody in my family, probably friends, did not want me to get in the boat, but I knew I was in contingency to win, and I wasn't scared. People, even when I tell the story, they're like, how not? Are you sure? Everybody kept saying, are you sure you want to race? Are you sure you're going to race? Is your head in the right space? That's when I say there wasn't a race I wanted to win more, not only for myself, but for my dad. I'd competed, and like we just talked about, a couple of the races, and I wanted to do it for him. And I went into ICU Sunday morning, and they had just pulled the trach out, and we were talking. And, of course, he wanted to know what happened, and we talked through a lot of it. And I said, Dad, I really want to race today, but I don't want to do it without your support. And he just looked at me and he said, I love you, be careful. And I wanted to race. Like I said, we knew the risk, and I wanted to get in the boat. I knew I had the proper safety equipment. I knew I had an amazing rescue out there, and I did. I drove. I don't think I've ever drove harder, and my brain, Gail's telling me, you got to cut in, and my thumb and my brain and that buoy, and everybody already knows I probably own every buoy on every planet, but that's beside itself. So, yeah, that was a tough one to swallow, but I gave it all I had. Yeah,
you sure did. I mean, we again, you can watch the coverage on RMG Sports' YouTube channel, fans, of Jayme coming back on that one, and she was standing that boat up on its end, trying to get around the buoys and try to catch up to Mike LaPadlo, who would be the eventual winner. I think that even though you struck the buoy, Jayme, I think you still salvaged the top 5, which is respectable. So, but let's move ahead a little bit to some more happier times, and let's talk about the final race of 2019 in Naples, Florida. Beautiful Naples, Florida, Florida's Paradise Coast, who was your sponsor last year. Now, I tell you what, Jeff Reno, you always got to be careful with that 34 boat behind you. Gave you a chase at the end. I mean, it gave you a chase the whole weekend, but still, you whooped up on everybody. Lee had issues. He already had the points championship in the bag. He really didn't have to go out there and kill himself. He had the world championship in the bag. But, what I want to talk about is at the very end of that race, after the story you just told about your dad, at the very end of that race, you won. And who was at the end of the dock to hand you the checkered flag to do your victory lap but your dad? How special was that?
Yeah, I just got chills when you telling that. And that's what I was going to say. Not only Jeff Reno and I have battled, and honestly, he has drove me all over the course more than any driver I know. He has sprayed me. He has, so if you want to talk about learning to drive, Jeff Reno has drove me around enough to where that was one of the coolest things. But just like you said, my dad, so not only did that was his race back, getting to come and being really my crew chief. He was on my radio. He was there as soon as I came out of the water, we didn't have 3 boats to work on. It was my boat and him, and, we need to change this, we need to fix that. And he was standing there on the dock with the checker flag when I pulled up, and I don't know who cried more, me, the fans, or possibly him. So that was worth the whole season.
Well, how is your dad doing now? How's the recovery going?
He's doing awesome. He just got cleared from his last surgeon, and I finally got him in the gym about halfway through and started doing PT with him. And so they had basically told him originally that they didn't know if he would get function back in his hand and his arm, and he's driving zero-turn mowers, he's driving STVs. We went to this last doctor's appointment, and they said, well, what happened? Of course, he likes telling the story, and they said, well, are you going to race again? And he tells us all the time. He's like, well, I'd probably have to get a divorce, except this time we found out the real reason. He said, well, I'd probably have to get a divorce, and that would cost me more than boat racing. So it was funny. So he's really doing good. He's, as far as strengthening and stuff, he's got a little ways to go and some still numbness in his finger. But as far as where he was and where he is now, it'll be a year coming up. He's doing great, and we appreciate everybody's thoughts and prayers.
Yeah, that's great. Now, what's in store for Jayme Durand and the number 9 boat for 2020? I mean, provided we have anything happen this year, I mean, it changes day to day, but so far there are some races on the calendar when it comes to both Powerboat Nationals and other tunnel boat racing series. What is in the cards for the number 9 boat in 2020?
I mean, I'm waiting just like everybody. We've gone back and forth on not knowing, motors this year. We're running 2.5, 120, wanting to get props in the off season, but, not knowing what. I know for sure Springfield's given a go-ahead in August. And we're doing our best right now, pending everything, no more shutdowns or closes. We're going to try to do that one. But honestly, I don't want to say it's hard to get a mindset and plan because of everything, but I've got an itch to get in the boat. That's kind of my happy place, and your brain shuts off and lets you forget about kind of everything going on. But no matter where we go or what we do, do the best I can and continue to get seat time and just hope to keep learning and growing.
Well, I think everyone out there, myself especially included, having to sit around at home and worry and fret and all that, and you have all the food sitting around. I know I've packed on my COVID-10. Some people might pack on the COVID-15. You are the owner of Epic Results, a gym in Augusta, Georgia. Now, Jayme, what kind of advice do you have for those of us that might have packed some pounds on having to sit around? I mean, can you give me some advice here to lose this weight?
Yeah, we offer Zoom classes. You can jump on from anywhere you want. So you can reach out and get you on the Zoom. But no, I mean, now it's like I tell my clients, and some people want to hear and some don't, even my dad. Now more than ever, your immune system's so important, and 80% of your immune system's in your gut. So just doing your homework and learning about the immune system and I'll be happy to help anybody. You can reach out. But just knowing what you're putting in your body, or just get up and move, if it's taking the stairs versus the elevator, or if you're outside, you can go for a walk or a bike ride if you're still stuck in quarantine, or shoot me an email or Facebook or whatever, and I'll shoot you some workouts. But just to be mindful of your health, because it's, especially with things like this, your immune system, when it's suppressed, it's definitely easy to get it.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, what do you have a website for Epic Results, or can they Google Epic Results?
Yeah, it's you can Google Epic Results, or it's www.epicultimateresults.com, and you can shoot me an email. It's Jayme, Jayme @epicultimateresults.com. Facebook, Epic Results. Instagram, same thing. One of those you can definitely, I'll make sure I get them all to my phone, so I'll get back to you immediately.
Well, she'll whip you into shape, fans, and she's looking to whip everybody else into shape in 2020, and hopefully we get to see her on the water. Jayme Durand, Pro Tunnel 1 driver, tunnel boat driver with Powerboat Nationals and beyond. Jayme, good luck this year if you're able to get on the water. Tell the family we said hi, and best of luck through everything to you. We thank you for your time.
I'll do it. Thank you so much.
Well, fans, that'll do it for the podcast this week. Thank you so much for listening. Make sure you give us a 5-star rating on whatever platform you're listening to us on. Also, make sure you like, share, subscribe, follow, do all that great stuff with all of RACER H2O's social media. We need to get the word out, fans, and we need your help to do it. So make sure you get the word out about RACER H2O. Hey, no racing, no problem. We're still trying to get all the news and information as it comes to us out to you, and also provide you with the interviews with people that you want to hear from. So make sure you let us know. Who do you want to hear from? Who do you want us to talk to? Who do you want us to bring on the show? What do you want us to ask them? Hit us up on social media. Thanks again for listening, fans. I'm your old pal, Jared. This has been the RACER H2O Podcast.